It's so nice to have you all here. And we're very excited for this masterclass. So Africa No Filter does host monthly masterclasses. So thank you all for joining us. It's nice to see the wide continental representation here. So Africa No Filter is a non-profit organization that works to challenge and change harmful narratives about Africa by amplifying these authentic and diverse stories from the continent. So really, it's an advocacy organization that shifts stereotypical narratives about Africa through storytelling, ultimately with the idea of reflecting a dynamic continent of progress and innovation and opportunity, which is not what we see in mainstream media. So there are lots of different initiatives, media campaigns you'll see online, storytelling projects, research, collaborations with artists, creators, and organizations across the continent, really. So really taking a proactive approach to telling our own stories. One of my favorite quotes is this idea that until the lion learns to speak, history will always glorify the hunter. So it's cool to see that we're essentially the lion that's learning how to speak so that we can glorify our own perspectives as a continent. So today, I'm very excited because we have an icon that will be talking to us about how creatives can attract funding for storytelling. So George Gachara will be speaking to us. So George is quite legendary. He's a creative industry strategist, a fund advisor, an investor in industries on the continent. And right now he's an honorary entrepreneurship fellow at Goldsmiths University in the UK, and he's also a founder himself. So George leads strategic initiatives which seek to accelerate the growth of creative industries in Africa. And these initiatives range from public sector advisory and partnership, fund establishment and management, and firm level business support to research and knowledge management. So over the last decade, George has had the experience of initiating, establishing, and managing catalytic funds and financial facilities like the Pioneer Creative Industries Fund, the HIVA Fund LLP, Regional Grant and Facility Ignite Fund, the Netflix Creative Equity Scholarship Program, and the Film Development Facility DOCA Film Africa Fund, and the Kenya Inclusive Creative Industries Program, among many others. So currently, George is also providing technical and strategic advice to institutions like the Africa Export-Import Bank, Afrexim Bank, MasterCard Foundation, as well as the International Fund for Promotion and Culture. So as you can tell, really one of one. There's nobody else who's better positioned to speak to us about this. So George will be talking about the concept of IP monetization, enterprise financing, beginner paths, so collaborations, reels, catalog development, brand building, as well as ways to find resources. And then at the end, we're going to have a Q&A session. So we have 270 participants here, so there's massive interest in this. And we're going to be hearing from the best person in the industry who's positioned to talk to us about this. So George, without further ado, please take it away.
Well, thank you, Bertha. I'd like to start by appreciating Africa No Filter for convening this conversation, for thinking about me and bringing me to speak to our captive audience, but also most importantly to the 276 people who have joined us for the next hour. So I won't stay too long in the introductions. I'll just go into the meat. Again, my name is George Gachara. I'm honored to be here. I'm glad that Bertha started with my my bio, but I always have to put a disclaimer that that's stuff that I've done over a decade. And so for the young people who are joining in and they think that I do that all the time, that is a cumulative work over more than a decade. And so when it's read together, it sounds hefty. But I want to say that the people that I look up to, that I celebrate, that I am inspired by are the everyday creatives, because they give me the perspective, they inform my work, they inform the kind of instruments that we build, the kind of vehicles that we build. And so really my bosses are usually the creatives and the people who are intermediaries for creatives. Today I've been asked to address a couple of questions And then after that, we'll open up for interactions with you. I've been asked to address the question of who is a creative from a financial or investment perspective. How can we or how can finance get to the creatives after we define who they are? And the other two questions that will be implicitly answered in my intervention would be how can creatives be ready for finance, and where is this finance? And so I like to set a bit of context as to who is a creative, especially in this continent that I so love. So in the first, second, and now in the third, going to the third decade of the 21st century, we have witnessed significant changes. And so a lot of us who are on this call have become active in commerce, in creative industries, in storytelling, in these 3 decades. And so all of us are experiencing the continent almost within the same context. And what is this context? Is that there's been a renaissance, a cultural renaissance across all African cities, and I've been to quite a number of them. And this renaissance in the back end has been characterized by a few things that are important here. Because they form the basis around which culture and creative industries are enjoying growth. We are having household incomes across the continent increase. We're seeing rapid adoption of digital and communication technologies. We're seeing increased remittances from our relatives abroad. We're seeing increased foreign direct investment, not necessarily directly to the creative industries, but to the superhighways such as the internet, telecommunications, payments, environment. And this is on the externalities. But also we are observing some things that are happening in the internality. I know this is not great English, but I'm using that generally to mean that we're seeing a collective sense of self-confidence across the continent, that from the time we started listening to Afrobeats, to Kwaito in South Africa, to now where we wear, we listen to music, we play with toys at home, the fashion, the contemporary arts, the cultural products that define us are mostly from the continent and are inspired by the continent. And so this is really the context in which culture and creative industries are happening. And that is important for me to highlight. A gentleman that I read from a lot is called Achille Mbembe, Cameroonian philosopher. He says that this renaissance that I've tried to explain has been driven by several transformative forces. The first is definitely digital age, and that content creators are truly the natives of the digital age, and the financialization of our economies, because then we can monetize or we can accrue financial benefits from our productions, whether they are direct productions or adaptations, but around our intellectual property. Across Africa, young Africans, and not just young Africans, but Africans at large, are leveraging their cultural assets and knowledge in areas like design, language, music, poetry, traditional craftsmanships, wellness, food, visual arts, storytelling, and they are breaking barriers, making incomes, and making their mark known both at home and in the continent and beyond. I am inspired by many artists. I dress, I love the shirts made by South Africa's Laduma in his own Makosa brand. When I am in Lagos, I visit Alara and I find all manner of artists I visit Addis Ababa Fashion Week. I used to go to the book cafe in Bulawayo and Harare. We really are seeing a renaissance of not just cultural enjoyment, but also production. And this is happening across all the continent. I know I've just named a few, but there are thousands of founders, thousands of creatives who are either working as individuals or in collectives or as companies across the continent who are making the galaxy of interconnected small businesses, big businesses, ventures, gigs that we are calling the culture and creative industries. So I've tried to define the first question. The first question is, who is a creative? It's, in essence, an African who is employing their cultural assets and knowledge to create new products. And these products are uniquely new IP, but they're also within a context of a renaissance, a confidence, a swag, and that's the context of culture and creative industries. So someone will ask me, how do we finance culture and creative industry workers or producers or creators? Because this is the new question of this decade. And why do they need finance? And so I'll start by saying that money does what money does. You buy stuff, you pay stuff, you exist. After you've eaten, you've accommodated yourself, then you start the other things. You pay your bills, you make investments, you live a comfortable life. And then now if you have surpluses, then you invest that for your future. So why do creatives need finance? So at the very primary level, personal finance, personal income is critical for anyone who works and sells and performs a sort of a labor. And before we even go to business finance, there is a whole universe of personal finance or personal income. Then the second application of finance to creatives is the application of enterprise finance or project finance, or the finance with which to continuously invest or produce cultural goods and services. So I will put on the table today two broad categories of financial tribes that the creative, the one that we've mentioned earlier, benefits from or has an affinity to. The first tribe is the philanthropy money. And the philanthropy money sounds like grants, scholarships, residencies, and so on and so forth. And this is money given from either a philanthropist, a government, a school, an institution, or a rich benefactor to an artist, to a creator, to create cultural goods and services, but for the purpose which they've defined in that transaction. But most likely, they do not require a return from that money. The return usually is in the vibe, in the impact, in the awareness, and so on and so forth. So I know a lot of people, maybe those that are in this conversation, have received some grants from institutions, including our host, but you're never told to pay that money back. But you have to deliver or fulfill a certain contractual obligation in a certain style, in a certain manner. And we'll get back to the philanthropic tribe of money. The second type of money that creatives and artists receive is what we are calling incomes from business transactions. And so this is once you transfer cultural goods and services in exchange for money, So it's income earned. And here we have, in this tribe of money, you hear certain words such as sponsorships, commercial partnerships, royalties, commission fees, loans, business investments, and so on and so forth. So how do you know which tribe of money is best for you? And this is a principal question that I always pose back to culture and creative industry practitioners and workers every time they come to me for advice on where to get money. So I'd like to start by a controversial statement that not all creative work requires investment or business capital. So if you're a student, an amateur artist, you are a gospel musician at church, and you're starting up, if you're in the beginning phase of your journey, I think there are better ways to finance your work without putting the pressure of return on investment, unless you already know that this is a banger. The beauty of culture and creative industries is that the growth potential or the virality or that the multiple ways we can earn from culture products is irrational. So this graph that I'm trying to draw in your mind is not linear. So in essence, I like to say that if you're beginning, you should start lean. You should look at friends and family. You should look at retained earnings from previous gigs or your own savings so that you can have a prototype. And the reason for this, and I've done this 100 times in my past, is so that you can create without the pressure of expectations that it must perform. Whatever you're creating must perform financially. But once you have proven that you have some sort of idea that is unique, that has an audience, then now you can move to another type of financing that might have a bit of royalty, which is either impact royalty or expectation, so that you graduate as you try and increase the pressure on your resources. But some people are risk takers and some people are confident, and whether they're students or not, or whether they're at the beginning or not, they want a significant amount of money because they trust their ideas and they trust their audience. And so if you're in that category of people, then I always say that then there are models to think about. There are models that give you legroom, and the legroom you need is so that you can be able to create the work, you can be able to prototype it, take it to market, build a reputation and a brand, and based on that, then you can be able to make your money back. So there are models that are that use the word equity, and this is people who believe in you, who put in some money in or some resources, whether they are physical resources, software resources, infrastructure, and even hard cash into your idea, but they want to earn from your income over the long term. And these are called the equity partners. And I always say that if you are an artist, you start from the grants, friends and family, then you go to the equity partners, and later you go to the kinds of finance that are more impatient. So I know I've used quite a number of languages, words that that I would like to define for you. And so I've used the word loans, I've used the word equity, I've used the word income. And you can see that these are all business words. These are words that accountants are very familiar with. And so if you are practicing as an individual, you're the individual artist, you're not represented by a gallery, you have not registered a company, those are words that may not come very soon to you. So you have a commission, you have a sponsorship, you have a scholarship as an individual. But if you formalize your work, so you register a brand, you register a business name, you register a private company, you register a collective, then your work becomes part of a collective. And immediately you become either a director of the entity, and your work becomes it becomes the work of the entity. So you have to define what kind of entity that you create to mediate the business transactions between you and your clients. And so a lot more people who want equity-like conversations, loans, and invoice discounting and all these sophisticated models, I encourage you to consider business structures so that then you can use those business structures to access the kind of money that is in the market. And I'm speaking this very generally, but when we get to the conversations at the Q&A, I can address specific questions. So how can a creative be ready for finance? And I know that most people, when they think about being ready for finance, what they are starting to think about is, where is the money? How can I make an application? But I want to take you back to who a creative is, who a creative producer is. A creative producer is someone who comes up with original intellectual property, whether it's in the form of a copyright, in music, in dance, in recipe, something that you've uniquely come up with that you can put as a product. And so the first thing to be able to be ready for financing is to be good at your craft, to be able to have original ideas, and to be able to have some sort of protection around your original ideas, whether they're registered, whether you've created a brand strong enough that everyone can recognize that pattern is indeed Ladoma's. That beginning of that song is indeed Black Coffee's. That indeed that dancing style or that painting style is from that specific creative or creative brand. So the thing that we sell as creatives is the originality and the inspiration of our creative work. I've met people who do not have very sophisticated business ideas that get significant investment because of the virality or the originality of their creative ideas. Yesterday, I was sitting in a film committee that was looking at different films to finance. And a first-time director, never directed before, came up with a very unique idea that we decided we are going to invest in this idea. But more than that, we will invest in trying to bring a team that will help this scriptwriter director to be able to actualize that dream. So your first sell is indeed your signature production. And then the rest of the thing is the machine that you build around your creativity, whether you keep your financial records, whether you protect your intellectual property, whether you have collaborations before that can vouch for your credibility, whether you have people who can come and say, George, we know this guy. If you give them money, we can guarantee that they will return. Or whether you've had other previous business relationships that have been able to bring return. So you have people who can say, yes, I want to work with this person again. So that's how to be primarily ready for your investment. And the second thing now invites for business for sophistication, thinking about your distribution, thinking about your marketing, thinking about how and when you're going to get your payment back. If you're a visual artist, are you represented by an agent? How many galleries have you had that are exclusive? How many awards have you won? And have you ever gone for an auction, whether locally or internationally? If you're a musician, do you have a catalog? Is it streaming? Do you have an agent? Do you have a manager? And so on and so forth. So the rest of the things are the sophistication around the IP, and that we build progressively. So as a beginner, you might not have that, but as you continue to build your craft, then the networks form, and you have proximity to communities that provide this. If you're a content creator, I'm sure a lot of us are content creators who are here. Are you represented? Are you part of a platform? Have you had some commissions before that have been successful? Can you use those contracts to value yourself, to learn from them, and for them to vouch for your future business? So I've attempted to answer the question of how to be ready for finance. And I've spoken pretty much about the individual creative. On the question of the business, how can your business be ready for investments? It is important that you consider record keeping. It is important that you imagine that the money that is earned by your business is not your money, is the business's own money. So you separate yourself from your business so that you're able to be paid by the business and the business loans from you so that you have a neat relationship, because a lot of our artists, their businesses are their pocket. And so when someone comes to look at your business, they find that they can't tell what is your resource and what is the business resource, and so on and so forth. So if you have a business, business hygiene is important, but also business networks. So have you collaborated with someone? Have you done individual shows that are not necessarily commissions, and so on and so forth? What is your brand? And this is important for us to consider, but we can't go into great depth within 35 minutes of this presentation. And finally, how do you access this financing? It depends with the type of financing that you're looking for. And so I will start with the business financing, then I can go to the philanthropic tribe. When we think about business financing, the first and most important type of finance that you must get for your business is trading income. You must sell some goods, whether cultural or otherwise, and get some income. And if you can reduce your costs of production and have a good margin, then you can survive as a business, whether you have external investment or not. But to get there, you need a bit of capital. So that if you're an artist collective that does videos, so that you are able to get your equipment, get your first work out, and so on and so forth. So you will have to either donate your hours to make the work without charging the business at the beginning, so that you have a reel, so that you have a catalog that which then will sell you, and then you can start to have business traction. So the first and most important revenue for any business is your own income. And I will not stay there too much, but that is the most important. So cash flow management is the lifeline of every business. And even for artists, even for creative business, how you manage your cash flow, how you manage those that you need to pay and those incomes that come in, that's where the business is. And so what are these income sources? The income sources are sales, sponsorships, commercial partnerships, royalties, um, uh, rentals, commissions, license fees. And this, you have to explore the complete breadth of your possible income sources. And in another masterclass or in another conversation, we can go deeper into each type of business income that you can deepen. And so how do you deepen business income? By getting tools, by getting to produce more of the kind of things that are bought from you. So if you're a studio, a music studio, a bigger catalog of artists, a bigger catalog of productions, a frequent release, you need to do that so that then your multiple streams of income can continue to sustain your business. And so you ask me, how do you start? You start by giving your own time and energy and know-how. But then you still need to eat and you need to pay rent and you need to do that. Then you get to friends and family, and they have to give you some sort of money to put your first studio together. And once you have a proof of concept, then you can go out and ask your rich uncle, your retired uncle and auntie who has a pension to give you a bit of that money, and you will pay back in the form of a soft loan that doesn't have, let's say, a big interest fee attached to it. And so once you do that second level of growth, a lot of people maximize the resources that are available in their own group of friends and family. Now you have to go into the market. And the market, you go with the strength of your brand and the strength of your products. So you have two types of resources that are available. The first resource are credit-based or debt-based. And this can be found in banks, from individuals, from private investors, from funds like the one I set up, Hever Fund, and so on and so forth. But there's also equity, where you talk to people who believe in your music, who believe in your work, and you tell them, I need $50,000, and I will make you a 30% shareholder in my business, and that's equity investment. Now we have people coming from different parts of the world, setting up accelerators and investment firms. Later, you can go to these people and say, I got investment from my friends and family. Then I got soft loans from my uncles and aunts. And then I found grants to do specific projects. And I have this kind of income from the sale of my catalog, whether it's through streaming and other mediums. But now I want to expand. Now you can go with your financial records and your history and people who can vouch for you and talk to private investors, banks, and so on and so forth. I've personally been involved with Netflix, who do commissions and they buy catalogs. So you either are good enough to be commissioned, you have a good CV, or you have a catalog of films that they would like to pay licensing for them to be in their service. I've had people like the Afrexim Bank through Canex. They are offering loans, but those loans require a little bit of sophistication before you get there. The likes of Hever Fund, who have existing facilities that you can apply to depending on the criteria or the needs that you have, and so on and so forth. And so I would advise that you first consider the in-house, where you consider developing unique ideas and protecting those unique ideas. The second thing, building sort of a structure around you, whether it's a non-profit structure or a for-profit structure. And once you have that clarity, then you know if it's a non-profit, then there's a path for you. And if it's a for-profit, then there is a path for business finance. I will stop there because I see I've consumed quite a bit of my speaking time. I will answer the questions on how to model for different types of instruments, especially business instruments, when I am asked questions by the audience. So over to you, Batha, to guide me in the next part of the session.
Thank you so much, George. You actually still have about 5 minutes left of speaking time, but there's so many questions here that I'm sure everybody appreciates that you're giving us some of your speaking time to answer questions. So I'm hoping the chat has been enabled again, but while that's being sorted out, please feel free to put your questions into the chat. But there have been some questions posted here, so I'll just go from the bottom up. So, George, a question perhaps that we can answer here is somebody's asking. So, Michael Miner is asking, how can I raise money to do a documentary? I'm a filmmaker with a niche in storytelling, specifically in the education and health sector. How do I package this? Do I need to have a financial statement?
I would appreciate if we take at least 3 or 4 questions so that I can answer these questions in bulk.
Okay, perfect. Another question is from Sherman Baloy. Sherman is asking, is there a structure template designed specifically for the various financing models that we can look at? And then from Angela M, happy to be here. Thank you very much. Can you please speak about funding for not-for-profit art organizations? So there's those 3, and then we'll take 3 after you've answered those, George.
Oh, thank you. So thank you, Angela. Thank you, Baloy, and thank you, Mina. So I think I will try and answer the first series of questions a little in depth so that I can address a couple of things so that as we progress, similar questions don't come back. So Mina is in filmmaking and wants to do social impact filmmaking in education and health. And the question that I didn't want to that I would like to know from Mina, whether he's a first-time filmmaker or whether he has a catalog of documentaries. Is it possible to get a sense of whether Minor is a beginner or has quite a bit of so Michael Miner says he has a catalog of work, and really because we are in I'm going to address Miner and everyone generally who are in this specific space. Miner, I think there is documentary filmmaking is a form of filmmaking that has quite a bit of resonance across the continent. And because of this resonance, we have seen a lot of resources that are available for documentary filmmaking beyond the subject for the filmmaking part that are available. So indeed, yesterday, I sat in a room full of people who are talking about the nature, the kinds of resources that are available to documentary filmmakers. There's research financing available. There's institutions like DocuBox, DOCA, Hewlett Foundation, Ford Foundation, Sundance Incubator, that are all helping documentary filmmakers to develop and research around their work. And once they're able to develop sort of the treatment or the basic structure, the subject, and so on and so forth, then they can write to other grant-making facilities that are interested in either the subject, whether the subject is in education or health or so on and so forth. So there's a myriad of people who you can apply to once you have developed the concept. So I would talk to Miner because he has a catalog, and hopefully the catalog could speak to some of the work that he's done, to the partnerships he's had, to the type of awards he has won, the places his projects have been screened before, and also the impact, the social impact after the work that he has done over the period he has done. So I would tell him, before you launch a new project, go back and develop your Bible. Tell us about who you are, what your motivations are, what the kind of work you've done before, and using that, then you can be able to sell yourself. And the first group of people you sell yourself to, especially when you're talking about new work, don't go into the full financing of the project. Start with development work, research work, and that you can be financed by both film financing institutions, but also the institutions that support the kind of subjects that you're talking about, whether it's NGOs, whether it's churches, whether it's health initiatives, and so on and so forth. So Miner, your work is easy. Is to make a compelling impact story out of the catalog that you have and show yourself and blow your horn, and then raise the resources for development and take your time. And thereafter, you can go into the production resources and never expect that the resources will come from one institution. A lot of us now are raising project resources from different investors. So you go to the Kenya Film Commission, you get some resources, you go to a foundation such as Batha Foundation, who are interested in health, Safaricom Foundation, KCB Foundation, and so on and so forth. And so that you can get small bits of financing towards the completion of your project. And hopefully you'll also be able to share the victories and highlight your sponsors. And this accounts for Angela. Angela is in not-for-profit, is looking for institutional financing for not-for-profit institutions. So I'll speak generally to not-for-profit NGOs, CSOs, cultural institutions. And so the first thing that I would say that for not-for-profit, not-for-profit does not mean that you must only rely on philanthropy. Not-for-profit means that even if you have something that can go to market, you do not have to share the as directors of the not-for-profit, you must not share the profits. You can plow those profits back. So because we are in the culture and creative industries, we have either we are serving communities that are exploiting sites, monuments, intangible culture, tangible culture, some that are also creating new work, goods and services. Those can be monetized. Those can be monetized using all the tools of monetization. Whether it's music, you can stream it. If it's sights and sounds, you can put ecologies, you can sell cultural goods and products, because these are commodities that are bought, whether you're for profit or not. And the money that you generate from that can be plowed in strategically into more productions or supporting the communities that produce. So your own finance is critical. The second level is also getting a community of support around you. I am part of a community that invests in a library in Kenya. And as high net worth individuals, we pledge to give some money to this library every year. And we've built numerous libraries, not only in Nairobi, but outside. And so you get a community of supporters around your theme, whether they are from the same community where the culture, where your work is based, and they can give you some resources because you're doing critical work that dignify them. So you are not excluded from bringing an audience of benefactors that support the work. If your work is around music, then sell pre-sales for tickets. Make sure there are people who get to be in table reads, in private launches of music, and because the most important thing we have is what people world over like to be part of coolness. And you can produce coolness, whether it's on the side of culture or on the side of creativity. And a lot of culture CSOs do not exploit coolness. So that is your work, my dear Angela. And Baloy, whether there are templates, whether there are structures, I will leave my information, but also I am Anko Gashara on Twitter, and I'm Anko Gashara on every platform. So reach out to me and ask direct questions, and I'm able to assist. Batha, I can take the next 2 or 3 questions.
The next set of questions. Awesome. So it seems like there's a common theme. So I've gone ahead and found the common theme, which is everybody seems to be wondering sort of about the stakeholders, where exactly you get funding for this. So we have Elias who's asked, is there a creative valuation model that we can use to value our work as assets if we go for loans from banks, which they will accept? So that one is a bit more technical. So what exactly do you say when you walk into a bank? Similarly, Kosua has asked, when you're a brand new registered company and you're looking for a grant, but people want to see audited accounts going back a few years, which is sort of a chicken and egg problem. How do you get around that? In the same vein, Sahid has asked if you need funding for a fellowship for young Africans on ethical storytelling, where do you go to get funding for this? Who should you approach? So people are also asking, is there a website, a list of grant givers that we can essentially look at? And then somebody's also asked, what can Hiva Fund, for instance, help with? So people are sort of asking as an immediate first step, what should people do? And then a second question that's thematically a bit different. Somebody's asking, how are tech-based innovations in the creative sector evaluated? Are they classified as scientific and technological, or can they still qualify for creative funding? So those are the two broad themes right now.
Okay, thank you, Batha, and thank you for everyone who has asked those questions. So I will leave the tech question to be last, because there is the valuation question and the tech question are technical questions that I will address at length. But I'm talking. Let me talk to brand new institutions. I talked about hygiene, and I want all of us to think about as soon as you've registered a company or a collective or an entity that goes between you and your clients, audiences, other external relationships, then you have to create some sort of hygiene. And some of it, you can do it by yourself, and some of it requires a bit of technical help. Back 15 years ago, I registered an arts collective under the name Nest Collective. I'll probably send a link so that people can have a bit of insight as to what I'm speaking about. I have, I'll put it on the chat. Maybe Batha will help me to put on the general chat.
Yeah, I'll put it on. I found it. I'll send it.
Have you seen it?
Yeah, I see it. The Nest Collective.
Yes,
Yeah,
the next.
I'll send it.
So you can share it so that people
This
can.
is this is the one about music, yeah?
It's called thisisthenest.com.
Okay, I'll put it in.
Yes. So I was going to give an example so that I can address the question of the person who said they have a brand new company and they're being asked for an audited statement. So 15 years ago, straight out of campus, I register an arts collective called the Nest Collective, and it was our desire to start producing films, music, and all manner of cool stuff. I didn't start off as a finance person. I started off as a producer. But the first question was that as soon as you call yourself the Nest Collective, what do you do to either get funding or even get commercial facilities? We decided that we were going to get a bank account and all our money was going to go through that bank account. But we didn't have an extensive HR manual, an extensive finance manual, because this is template documents that everyone asks for. And so what we did is that we made sure from day one, we had an audit. What is an audit? It's any registered accountant can produce an audit, even if it's for one day. You do not have to have money to have an audit, but you can audit your time and how much it costs. The assets that you brought into the company as loans and how much that is worth, and so on and so forth. And so from day one, when we were making an application, we had friends who were able to create for us a guideline, a one-page financial guideline on how we will manage our money, a one-page HR policy on how we will deal with each other, a one-page procurement manual guideline, a one page. So the thing that I want to encourage the person who said that you have to invest in the things that help you to make a case and to reduce the noise for the resources that you want. And so I always had a folder that had our registration documentation, our guidelines, our banking information, our personal contacts, our references. And so every conversation that required some sort of money or support, I had a cache of 12 documents that I would send to someone. It had some reference letters in there. It had some our financial records. Even if there was no money, it could show that we've invested this amount of time, that we brought our cameras, that we've used this. This is the amount that the company owes us. And so from there, you are able to build over time the subsequent documentation, that we did not spend money without receipting it. We did not receive money that we didn't bank. So we had sort of a discipline, but we were helped by having an accountant on board from day one. And after that, we started to sophisticate that at the end of the year, we could audit. At the end of the year, we did a one-pager sort of annual report that declared the number of people who've seen our films, the number of people who've given us testimonials after they have seen their films, our awards, the places we were invited to go and speak. So we had a bit of an annual report that helped us to do our fundraising and create and track our credibility. So you have to invest in yourself. You have to create the professional documents that are required. It does not matter at what stage of founding that you are. And nobody will ever tell you this. And if you don't have it, you will be looked at as incompetent. And so let's go to the question of valuation, the valuation model. And so this is last year in December, I addressed the global conference on WIPO, World Intellectual Property Organization, as they were talking about the new move towards financing creative industries based on IP. And one of my reflections is that while our sector is sophisticating, at this point, our valuation has to become user data and so on and so forth. So let's take, for example, I have invested in a music production studio. They came to me and they asked for $150,000 and they wanted to release new catalogs and sign new artists. And I told them, how can they guarantee that they will pay me back my $150,000 and after how long? So they needed to go back to look at the kind of royalties that they have, that they earn annually, how much sponsorships they earn annually, how much they get from their own concerts, and how much they invest. So the valuation really came from them. And the reason that they were able to produce that material is that they understood themselves from a business perspective. Because at the very beginning is that they have an understanding of intellectual property, and so they register their music, so they have copyright certificates, they do it properly using global standards, and these are available for anyone who is a publisher. And once they do that, they commission, through third parties, they're able to take their music for streaming, and so they earn their royalties locally through local institutions and internationally through representation. And because of this, they can tell me that they earn up to $30,000 annually on royalties. And so as an investor, I know that if I was to get a 50-50 repayment from only their royalties, they will take a certain number of years based on the royalty earnings that they already have now to pay me back plus my return on investment expectation. So that is a very crude form of valuation and the use of intellectual property to free some production royalties. And beyond that, then we would go into modeling and say that because they earn this from their previous models, so how will they earn now based on their experience and when they sign new artists? And so they say they will sign this type of artist who will produce this number of albums, and they will have this number of events. They'll attract this kind of audiences so they can monetize those pages this way. They will have this kind of activities that have this kind of revenues, so they can project how much they will earn out of the investment. And therefore then, based on their previous valuation and the kind of projections that they are making for the investment, we can create a rough picture of what would be a potential pessimistic return. And we can create a model using that. So based on that model, I can give them a contract and say that you will be paying me $20,000 for the next 7 years. And I will have a share. I will have a relationship where I'm the first one to take my money before you distribute to the partners and so on and so forth. So valuation is still a growing space for media, but for visual arts, we already have models, and those models are built because of representation, because of the auctions that you've been to. If you make work, definitely, in general, is the way people view your catalog of work. And as you continue to produce more work, then your catalog grows in value. And finally, tech-based innovation for creative industries is a field that I have been fascinated by since COVID. We've invested in film distribution platforms. We've invested in fashion distribution platforms, music distribution platforms, and so on and so forth, and ticketing platforms. And there is definitely a tech way of looking at whether this platform makes sense. And so our credit committees use both the creative modalities, but they also really subject any tech-related innovation to to a tech criteria. So what I say is that we rely on our credit committees and our experts at deal identification committee to examine every application brought to us. And so my response is that you're not exempt from the tech metrics, because the application is a tech application in creative industries. I think I will stop there because the question of fellowships for storytellers will come in the next round of conversations. Thank you.
Awesome. So just another set of questions that haven't been quite addressed before. So one, and these two are from Banandi. One, Banandi is asking, what storytelling techniques make a film proposal or pitch stand out to investors or production houses? So, George, I know you've spoken about professionalizing, valuating. Maybe this question is just asking you to speak more to the models that might be available in the visual arts. So, just what would be put in a pitch? What would you put in a proposal for those committees to sort of consider funding a project? And then Banandi's also asking, how can media startups or content creators position their work to attract corporate sponsors? And then Peter is asking, we've sort of spoken about somebody who has a documentary catalog, but what's your advice to a novice seeking the same funding to tell stories based on culture and societal issues? So sort of for first-time documentary filmmakers in the room. And I'm seeing that in the chat, everybody's connecting, everybody's sharing their details. Please keep doing that. So George, if you could just answer those.
So to answer the last question is that my name, I'm Anko Gashara, or at Gashara on Twitter, so, or X, and I'm Anko Gashara on Instagram, and I'm George Gashara on LinkedIn, so feel free to reach out. Now to the substantive questions. So there's a question on techniques, there's a question on first-timers, and there's a question on pitching for business, so generating sales for content and startups. So let's start with novice beginners. These are my favorite group of people because the odds are stacked up against them, but their victory is very clear. I enjoy working with first-time filmmakers, first-time content creators, because they do not have inhibitions, institutional or otherwise. What they have to have is strong intellectual property, strong ideas. So if you have strong ideas, then you will, the investors will find a way to bring money to you. And I want to be very clear. I've invested in so many ideas that were original, very strong, but the people, the sponsors, so to speak, the directors, the proposers, were doing it for the first time. So the strength of the idea is the beginning of culture and creative industries. So you must be able to spend some time, research. Don't believe for a second that your ideas are the best. Test them, do prototypes, and come with a bit of evidence. I also do that. Every time I want to set up a fund, including last year, we were setting up a regional film fund. We had to put on our own money. We had to think about the model. We had to think about why are we the best people for that investment to come to. So if you're a first timer, sharpen your storytelling, your perspective, your form collectives, become the best in the medium that you're talking about. Become innovative in that medium, and you will not have to think about the structure. Eventually, you'll be able to develop the structure around it, but the strength of the idea is what carries. I'm trying to generate illustrations so that I can help you understand what I'm trying to say, but I've been speaking for the last 40 minutes. So when the ideas come to me, I will share them. So, so let's talk about sales for startups, sales for content creators. Nobody will buy from you if they don't know you. Nobody will trust you if they don't have a relationship with you. So your primary obligation is relationship building. The first 2 or 3 years of your work is networking, making sure you are in the right places, you have good relationships, people who can vouch for you. You make cold calls and you ask them to trust you, and you start with the simple things. There's no magic. There's no secret. You just have to be courageous enough, get out of your comfort zone, seek people. It helps that we have social media, we have LinkedIn, we have all these people in podcasts saying who built them and where they went and who was a role model. So you must listen to people you aspire to be like. They will be brought to events like this. They will speak and say, oh, so and so mentored me. I went to this school. Follow those people, go to their social media, write emails. If you look at my LinkedIn, I on a daily basis, I have like 70 inboxes of people saying, I'm in Nigeria, I'm a filmmaker. This is my website. And sometimes when I'm looking for new ideas, I go through my inbox, or my assistant looks at my inbox and says, okay, there's this group of people. They might be useful for this kind of opportunity that is there. So reach out to people. Don't be afraid. Ask to be trusted. Ask for internships. That's the only way to find your own audience. But it helps because now everyone is a little bit more accessible. I can see the chat is exactly what we're talking about. People are putting out their Instagram, they are putting up their bios. So somebody somewhere will say yes, even if they're the fifth or sixth or seventh person, or is the second, third, or fourth time you've asked. But every time you ask, please imagine that they have needs and that you have an ability to fulfill some of their needs, whether they're business needs or impact needs, and try and align yourself with the needs that they have and get someone to vouch for you. So there's a question about techniques for visual artists and filmmakers to find funding. So what is a filmmaker's best skill? Is to make a film. What is a visual artist's best thing to showcase? Is their visual arts, whether it is in animation, whether it is paint on canvas, whether it's a digital art, whether it's music. Your best PR is a thing that you can produce best. So a lot of people tell me to share their pitch decks, all these things. To be honest, those things can always be made. You can always hire someone to make a CV for you. You can always make a pitch deck, a pitch Bible. You can even use AI to generate these kind of things for you. But the thing that you're trying to sell is your intellectual property and your abilities. So if you're a visual artist, give me a catalog of your work. If you're a filmmaker, make a show reel and then begin from there, because someone will see your technique, someone will see your directorial inclination, someone will see your ability to tell stories, and they will want that. And then they'll tell you this is what we require for procurement, or this is what we require for grant making, or this is what we will require to start processing the thing that we already like about you. And I think for our artists, use the social media to tell your own story, not just the work that you put out there, but the kind of person that you are, because people like the work, but also they like the story of the person who is behind this work. I have fundraised for the last 15 years with a significantly high success rate. And my success rate is because my politique is clear, my thoughts are clear, I write, I talk about them, people know who I am, and I use my credibility and my past experience to make a case for myself. So the thing that you know best is your best tool to generate sales and to get attention and to persuade. Thank you.
Thanks, George. So we have just over 15 minutes, but if nobody has any more questions, that's fine. We don't want to keep you talking, but there are a few last specific ones that I've picked up that haven't quite been addressed. And they're quite short. Modupe is asking, how important are social media followers and your community in getting funding? Bola is asking, can you give helpful guide to getting funding for a production company for African children's content? So this one's quite specific. And then Patricia is asking for general advice on building and structuring a sustainable framework for nonprofit organizations with a philanthropic strategy in mind. So all of those are quite specific. So if you'd like, you can keep them quite short, and then yeah, we don't have to stay longer if there are no more questions. But we have just over 15 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Bertha, for this last group of questions. So I'll start with the social media follower conversation. I will address it from where I sit, not necessarily from a content creator's perspective. Every artist needs an audience, and it is the artist to know which tools to use to generate an audience. And what is the audience for? The audience are the people who validate you, and they validate you by consuming your work, by giving you feedback, by speaking about you, by being proud of you, by relating to the stories that you make. And so I've been a part of a board of a theater, and a theater requires people who pay tickets. And so are those the people on social media? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe it's members of a club, a theater club or a book club. But do they need social media, thousands of social medias? Maybe they do, so that they can advertise their next show. I've also been part of a film collective, and for every film that we had a specific social media page for it, so that all the marketing is focused and concentrated. And so did we necessarily get to the millions for every film project? No, but we were able to augment our total number of our social media presence for different assets. We were able to use our assets broadly. But social media is a significant part of our expression in our current reality. But you have to have a strategy about it. but most importantly, how to convert those that follow you into those that are just followers because they are outsider observers, and those that are actually buyers. And so I think there are a number of people even within this conversation who know and whose skill is to do programming and strategy for social media. I think the person who's asked me this question, invest in yourself, talk to social media specialists. They'll tell you from a marketing perspective that there are those that you create awareness from. There are those that that buy from you, and that your immediate audience, and there are those that are repeat clients. So then you segment your audiences, and then you give different services to your different audiences. And the hope is that you can get more repeat buyers and long-term following. There's someone who had a specific question about African children content, and I am assuming that this is film content that they want to either get investment or sponsorship for. Film investment is very specific. If it is a series, a long-term series, let's say on Cartoon Network or Club Kuboko or in our local television broadcasters, and they want to have you on air for years. So the first group of people to think about are the people who will buy the content from you. And so they will commission you a certain amount of money. And so if it is a commission, they'll pay for it. If it's a partnership, then you have to see how much they contribute and how much you bring in. The rest can be raised through brand building, sponsorships, and so on and so forth. Children content is amazing because you can sell all manner of fast-moving consumer products, from education products to nutritional products to health products, because the child is not the customer, the parent is the customer. So I think you can sit down with a marketer or someone who has experience in selling children content. But really, film financing has a specific water flow. First, it has the equity investors. Second, it has the pre-sales. Third, it has the sponsorships and so on and so forth, rebates. And finally, you get the advertisements and so on and so forth. So look at your waterfall and say, this is my budget and this is the structure of my waterfall. There are people who own this brand and they will sell it to make merchandise, and that is another line of business. They'll sell it for advertisements and so on and so forth. And so you get a good number of people who are at equity participation level. Then you go to the next group of people until you get to debt. So it is very easy if you have a demonstrable product, and especially if it is a long-term product. I would say that a lot of educational African children content can also be sold internationally. I've been part of conversations with European television buyers that they say African filmmakers mostly make film content for adults, and usually it's either documentaries or drama or feature film, but they never make material for children. And Europeans want to see and hear songs and elephants and all manner of work that is related to our culture. So try and expand your distribution beyond the continent to other markets, China, Asia, the Americas, and Europe. And you will find that you can have secondary markets, licensing fees, and so on and so forth. The person who asked for sustainable framework for civil society, philanthropy organizations, I'd like to say that it's important that those that are really experts within the philanthropic space are able to create networks where this question of how philanthropies are sustained are dealt with at an in-depth level. But it is important for philanthropies within culture and creative industries, whether within tangible culture or intangible culture. Those that are around tangible culture, this is sites, museums, archaeological, cultural communities. You can generate resources using the assets that are around the communities and the intellectual property to sustain yourself, create festivals, create museums, create actual products that will contribute over 40% of your revenues, so that then you're talking about raising about 60% of your revenues from other things. Then now you can talk about publishing, rights, and other types of residual incomes. And if you haven't exploited the assets, the cultural assets, then you're only relying on grant work. And we are seeing right now the world is in a crisis. Europe and the Americas have closed their pockets. So there's limited resources internationally for philanthropy in culture, unless it's family offices and specific foundations. So I think it is it's important for us to think about how to use our cultural assets to be part of the tourism circuit, to be part of festival circuits, to be part of, to release fashion collections, to do actual commercial projects that bring value back to these communities without necessarily always relying on grants, because there's an insecurity around the world around grant making. And even if there's some grant left, it is often project financing and is not institutional financing. So more and more, it is important that that your NGO puts up a cultural hotel or even a club, and the proceeds that come from that, or a studio or a recording label, and through that, then they are able to sustain the administration of the philanthropy. So I will stop there and say thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you for the questions that you have asked me. And most importantly, thank you for your work in culture and creative industries, and for your interest in learning and aligning to resources so that you can continuously produce. The most important feedback is that the difference between other industries and our industry is that we have IP, intellectual property, which people want globally. They want to hear our music, they want to see our dance, they want to taste our food, they want to visit our sites and locations, they want to wear our clothes, play with our toys, decorate their homes with our cultural goods and services, they want to educate their kids, and all this can be revenue points for you, so that you already come into the sector knowing and creating products for an environment that requires, desires, and is proud of your work. And that was the context in which I started my presentation. So I'll stop there and say thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, George. Thank you so much for everybody who joined us. So just a reminder to please fill out the post-webinar survey. So we had the pre-webinar survey, but that was different. So we'd really appreciate it if you could fill out the post-webinar survey. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. I'm just going to put George's social media details in the chat again. So follow for some tips. I know I'll definitely be following. Thank you so much, George. This was very, very helpful. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I just have one more thing. Those that wanted to find more information about Fund, they can just go to heverfund.com. All the information is there. All the finances are available there. And I constantly post on my social media the opportunities that are on my dashboard. So if you follow me, say hi. If you don't, I will still post, and you might benefit from some of them. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Thanks, Lerato. Bye, everybody.
Bye.